Tonight, President Trump on foreign soil and blasting our allies and even NATO itself. We're going to show you why this is a lot more than just a typical war of words. It also could make a huge difference if, God forbid, a real war broke out. Then the rest of the show, all about the law. We're going to start with the Russia probe, and there are real developments, and also how Judge Kavanaugh could play a major role in that if the case goes all the way to the high court. Also, thousands of kids still without their parents, that after being separated at the border. It is causing all sorts of legal issues. Our panel of attorneys will be here to hash it all out. Evening, everyone, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. A lot to get to in the next 60 minutes. And we begin in Europe, where President Trump is meeting with most of our closest allies. That is, he sits with the heads of NATO. NATO, as you know, the alliance whose mission it is to keep Europe safe and free, especially from aggression from Russia. But the question today is, who's going to keep Europe safe and free from Trump? Well, the president, he went after NATO and its members to their faces today. And for more, I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman, who drew the short straw to try and make sense out of the nonsensical. This one is utterly bizarre.
And what we heard from the president today, Rich, continues a theme that we heard from him even before he left Washington. The president's NATO bashing began even before he left yesterday. Here he is at the White House.
NATO has not treated us fairly, but I think we'll work something out. We pay far too much, and they pay far too little. But we will work it out.
He's focused on the money, and then today at breakfast with NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg, Trump ratcheted up the criticism to 11, pointing much of his ire towards Germany.
Germany is totally controlled by Russia because they were getting from 60 to 70% of their energy from Russia and a new pipeline. And you tell me if that's appropriate, because I think it's not. The United States is paying far too much, and other countries are not paying enough. I think it's very sad when Germany makes a massive oil and gas deal with Russia, where you're supposed to be guarding against Russia, and Germany goes out and pays billions and billions of dollars a year to Russia. So we're supposed to protect Germany, but they're getting their energy from Russia. Explain that.
As for the leaders of both NATO and NATO member nations, they seem caught somewhat off guard by Trump's bull in a China shop routine, but tried to remain as positive as possible.
But the strength of NATO is that despite these differences, we have always been able to unite around our core task to protect and defend each other.
NATO is as vital to us today as it ever has been.
They're hoping that remains the case. European leaders are freaking out about the level of Trump's commitment to both NATO and to European security, and they're not alone. Also expressing concern or condemnation of Trump's approach, well, there's the U.S. Senate. The Senate voted 97-2 last night over a resolution expressing support for NATO, a bipartisan rebuke of the president. Keep in mind that a nearly unanimous vote in the Senate, impressive given how divided the Senate is on most issues. Joining 97 senators is House Speaker Paul Ryan, also a Republican. Ryan called NATO indispensable and as important today as it's ever been. The House is going to have a similar vote as well today. Also critical of Trump, retired U.S. Navy Admiral Jim Stavridis, who also served 4 years as NATO's Supreme Allied Commander. He said of the U.S.-NATO relationship, quote, "What is different now is the obvious antipathy, which feels deeply personal, on the part of the U.S. president towards the alliance in general and some of the leaders in particular." Also retired Lieutenant General Mark Hartling of the Army, the retired commanding general of U.S. Army Europe and the 7th Army. He says that NATO matters and Trump's trashing of it is dangerous. More criticism of Trump on NATO, this time from James Melville, who resigned 2 weeks ago as the U.S. ambassador to Estonia and served as a diplomat for 6 presidents and 11 secretaries of state. He quit his post because of Trump, saying, quote, "For the president to say the EU was set to take advantage of the United States to attack our piggy bank, or that NATO is as bad as NAFTA, is not only factually wrong, but proves to me that it's time to go." And his resignation as the ambassador to Estonia resonates, given that many people in Estonia and other Baltic nations are living in mounting fear of an invasion from Russia. Russia, of course, invaded Ukraine and annexed Crimea, both in 2014. The Baltic states are also NATO members, so any aggression from Russia should be countered by NATO with the U.S. in the lead. But NATO is now questioning the U.S. resolve should that happen because of Trump. That plank in the NATO charter that an attack on one NATO member is an attack on all of NATO, and all of NATO will respond is called Article 5. And it's only been invoked once in NATO history, on September 13th, 2001, after one NATO member was attacked on 9/11. That member? the United States. And yet, amid all of Trump's NATO bashing, he continues to lavish praise on Vladimir Putin. Here he is in Washington Tuesday.
So I have NATO, I have the UK, which is in somewhat turmoil, and I have Putin. Frankly, Putin may be the easiest of them all. Who would think? Who would think?
A lot of people might have thought that, prompting headline after headline and editorial after editorial, all noting the same thing. Why does Trump treat our allies like our enemies while treating our enemies like our allies? On Monday, when he meets with Putin, Trump will even bump that up another notch. He's insisting on meeting one-on-one with Putin with no other staffers in the room. Rich?
You cannot. If this was part of our beloved West Wing of an episode, we'd say they jumped the shark.
Yeah.
Listen, what you said about Estonia and what we've already seen in Crimea and what we've already seen in the Ukraine, it's a clear message to Russia: do what you want, because I'm not going to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Europeans.
And when Russia invaded Ukraine and annexed Crimea, one of their claims was, well, there are mostly Russian-speaking people there, so it's really a part of Russia. Well, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, Russian is spoken in heavy usage there. They could easily use the same excuse there. And Trump has said he may not honor Article 5 if the member states don't pay up. It's a little bit of blackmail. It's, nice continent you got there. It'd be a shame if something happened to it.
He moved the coal boats today where they're saying they're paying around 2% of their GDP. He wants to make them pay 4%. That's not even in the agreement till 2022. My point is, he's doing everything he can to burn every bridge to something like NATO. And in the same news cycle, Andrew, where you have a European killed with a chemical nerve agent by Russians, by all accounts, he's on European soil saying, I'm with Putin, I'm not with you.
Look, other presidents have criticized NATO states for
Yep.
not giving enough money. Obama did, George W. Bush did as well. But they came to the realization that it wasn't worth it to complain so much that it undermined the alliance itself. The alliance was too important to get caught up in back and forth fighting over money. With Trump, he seems fixated on the money, and a lot of people have said the single greatest thing that you could give to Vladimir Putin is a dissolution of a unified Europe, and particularly Europe's relationship with the United States. That's what Russia wants, because that weakens the West and gives them more power and an opportunity to expand.
In past generations where we did the Marshall Plan and all the things that we've done to the benefit of the U.S., let alone global security, and now what we're doing, and we're doing this while we have military bases in Europe. It is inexplicable to the nth degree. Andrew, thank you. When we come back, we're going to continue the conversation as global events impact, well, even the probe. Michael Cohen, Donald Trump, Rudy Giuliani, Judge Kavanaugh, all of these people could play a major role in the Russia probe. We'll connect the dots for you and also take a look at the latest developments with a former federal prosecutor.